Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So we're continuing our reading from the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. We're in the introduction, and Archita reminded me that this is a reading, and I'm glad he reminded me of that because he said that Prabhupada's leading us into Gaur Purnim, and you really, what you're about to hear is so good, it's so interesting, and it's so like Prabhupada's realization that you really don't want to hear anything pretty much other than what Prabhupada's about to say. It's going to be so good, I'll tell you that, because I read ahead. And I just want to quickly add, this is the book that kind of made me a devotee. About almost 48 years ago, coming up this next month, a devotee gave me one of these on the street in Midtown Manhattan, and I got it and I started reading it, and I couldn't stop reading it. I read it as I was standing there waiting for the train. On the train, I was reading it. I read it as I was walking from the train to the place where I lived, and I read it till about 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. And I remember thinking to myself, man, I don't even know if I understand what I'm reading, but this is so good, I can't even stop reading this book. So this is an amazing book, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Okay, so here we go. Actually, the Caitanya Charitamrita is not intended for the novice, for it is the postgraduate study of spiritual knowledge. Ideally, one begins with Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, and advances through Srimad Bhagavatam to Caitanya Charitamrita. Although all these great scriptures are on the same absolute level, for the sake of comparative study, the Caitanya Charitamrita is considered to be on the highest platform. Every verse in it is perfectly composed. So Caitanya Charitamrita is like the top of the top of the top. You have Bhagavad Gita, and then above that is Srimad Bhagavatam, which is considered the ripened fruit of the desire tree of the Vedic knowledge, and then even above that is the Caitanya Charitamrita. In the second verse of the Caitanya Charitamrita, the author offers his obeisances to Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. He compares them to the sun and the moon because they dissipate the darkness of the material world. In this instance, the sun and the moon have risen together. In the Western world, where the glories of Lord Chaitanya are relatively unknown, one may inquire, who is Krishna Chaitanya? The author of the Caitanya Charitamrita, Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj, answers that question in the third verse of his book. Generally, in the Upanishads, the Supreme Absolute Truth is described in an impersonal way, but the personal aspect of the Absolute Truth is mentioned in the Isopanishad, where we find the following verse. Hiranmayena patrena satyasya pahitam mukam tatvam pusan apavrinu satya dharmaya dristaye. O my Lord, sustainer of all that lives, your real face is covered by your dazzling effulgence. Kindly remove that covering and exhibit yourself to your pure devotee. Isopanishad 3, Upanishad 15. The impersonalists do not have the power to go beyond the effulgence of God and arrive at the personality of Godhead, for whom this effulgence is emanating. The Isopanishad is a hymn to that personality of Godhead. It is not that the impersonal Brahman is denied, it is also described, but that Brahman is revealed to be the glaring effulgence of the body of Lord Krishna. And in the Caitanya Charitamrita, we learn that Lord Chaitanya is Krishna himself. In other words, Sri Chaitanya is the basis of the impersonal Brahman. There's that verse in the 14th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says, I am the basis of the impersonal Brahman. Brahmano hi pratishtham. So, of course, Lord Chaitanya, Krishna are the same, so Lord Chaitanya is the basis of the impersonal Brahman. The Paramatma or Supersoul who is present within the heart of every living entity and within every atom of the universe is but the partial representation of Lord Chaitanya. Notice how Prabhupada uses the name Lord Chaitanya and Krishna interchangeably. Okay? Therefore, Sri Krishna Chaitanya, being the basis of both Brahman and the all-pervading Paramatma as well, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As such, He is full in 6 opulences: wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. In short, we should know that he is Krishna, God, and that nothing is equal to or greater than him. There is nothing superior to be conceived. He is the supreme person. Srila Rupa Goswami, a confidential devotee, taught for more than 10 days continually by Lord Caitanya wrote, Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namani Gortashve Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya, who is more munificent than any other avatar, even Krishna himself, even though he is Krishna himself, because he is bestowing freely what no one else has ever given, pure love of Krishna. Lord Chaitanya's teachings begin from the point of surrender to Krishna. He does not pursue the path of karma yoga or jnana yoga or hatha yoga, but begins at the end of material existence, at the point where one gives up all material attachment. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna begins his teaching by distinguishing the soul from matter. And in the 18th chapter, he concludes at the point where the soul surrenders to him in devotion. The Mayavadis would have all talk cease there. But at that point, the real discussion only begins. As the Vedanta Sutra says at the very beginning, Atato Brahma Gigyasa. Now let us begin to inquire about the Supreme Absolute Truth. Rupa Goswami thus praises Lord Chaitanya as the most munificent incarnation of all. For he gives the greatest gift by teaching the highest form of devotional service. In other words, he answers the most important inquiries that anyone can make. And I just got inspired, which if I could find something, I'd like to add something to that from this book. Let's see if I can find it. I found it. Okay. So now you're going to hear, not only is Lord Chaitanya the most munificent, magnanimous incarnation, but here's another verse by Rupa Goswami that appears in the Govinda Lilamrita, which kind of gives us some insight into who he distributes this love of Godhead to. So this verse goes, Yog Jana Matam Bhuvanam Dayalor Ulag Hayan Ap Yakarot Pramatam Swaprema Sampat Surya Bhute Hum Shri Krishna Chaitanyam Amum Prapadye. Let me surrender unto the lotus feet of Shri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is the greatest, most merciful personality of Godhead. He delivers those who emerged in ignorance and offers them the highest gift of love of Krishna, thus makes them mad after Krishna consciousness. So it's just kind of elaborating upon Rupa Goswami, what he said in that other verse. But Lord Chaitanya, he's delivering this love of Godhead to those merged in ignorance. He's giving the highest thing, love of Krishna, to the lowest, people who are merged in ignorance. And he's elevating them from the... This is the potential. Prabhupada used to like that word, potential, of the Krishna consciousness movement. It has the potential to elevate people who are merged in the lowest ignorance to the highest love of Godhead and make them mad after Krishna. So, back to our introduction here. There are different stages of devotional service and God realization. Strictly speaking, anyone who accepts the existence of God is situated in devotional service. That's an interesting point right there. To acknowledge that God is great is something, but Prabhupada says, but not much. Lord Chaitanya, preaching as an acharya, a great teacher, taught that we can enter into a relationship with God and actually become God's friend, parent, or lover. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna showed Arjuna his universal form because Arjuna was his very dear friend. Upon seeing Krishna as the Lord of the universes, however, Arjuna asked Krishna to forgive the familiarity of his friendship. Lord Chaitanya goes beyond this point. Through Lord Chaitanya, we can become friends with Krishna, and there will be no limit to this friendship. We can become friends of Krishna not in awe and adoration, but in complete freedom. We can even relate to God as his father or mother. This is the philosophy not only of the Caitanya Charitamrita, but of the Srimad Bhagavatam as well. So I want to just throw in here. So this introduction is a transcription of lectures Prabhupada gave on the Caitanya Charitamrita in New York City, way back in 1966, I believe. Let me just confirm. 66, 67. So these are those lectures, and they were just transcribed. So you're getting Prabhupada's realization on top, on these literatures. So where was I? There are no other scriptures in the world in which God is treated as the son of a devotee. Yeah. Usually God is seen as the Almighty Father who supplies the demands of his sons. The great devotees, however, sometimes treat God as a son in their execution of devotional service. The son demands and the father and mother supply. And in supplying, Krishna, the devotee, becomes like a father or mother. Instead of taking from God, we give to God. It was in this relationship that Krishna's mother, Yasoda, told the Lord, "Here, eat this, or you'll die. Eat nicely." In this way, Krishna, although the proprietor of everything, depends on the mercy of his devotee. This is a uniquely high level of friendship, in which the devotee actually believes himself to be the father or mother of Krishna. Wow. However, Lord Chaitanya's greatest gift was his teaching that Krishna can be treated as one's lover. In this relationship, the Lord becomes so much attached to his devotee that he expresses his inability to reciprocate. Krishna was so obliged to the gopis, the cowherd girls of Vrindavan, that he felt unable to return their love. Quote, "I cannot repay your love," he told them. I have no more assets to give. Devotional service on the highest, most excellent platform of lover and beloved, which had never been given by any previous incarnation or acharya, was given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Therefore, Krishnadas Kaviraj, quoting Srila Rupa Goswami, writes in the 4th verse of this book, Lord Chaitanya is Krishna with a yellow complexion, and he is Sachinandana, the son of Mother Sachi. He is the most charitable personality, because he came to deliver Krishna Prema, unalloyed love for Krishna, to everyone. May you always keep him in your heart. May you always keep him in your heart. And then it will be easy to understand Krishna through him. Okay. So for extra credit bonus points, can anybody quote the Sanskrit to that verse? The one I just read. Yeah. Thank you very much. There's somebody who's studying the books. Okay, so reading on. We have often heard the phrase, love of Godhead. How far this love of Godhead can actually be developed can be learned from the Vaishnava philosophy. Theoretical knowledge of love of Godhead can be found in many places and in many scriptures, but what that love of Godhead actually is and how it is developed can be found in the Vaishnava literatures. It is the unique and highest development of love of God that is given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Even in this material world, we can have a little sense of love. How is this possible? It is due to the presence of our original love of God. Whatever we find within our experience within this conditioned life is situated in the Supreme Lord, who is the ultimate source of everything. In our original relationship with the Supreme Lord, there is real love, and that love is reflected pervertedly through material conditions. Our real love is continuous and unending, but because that love is reflected pervertedly in this material world, it lacks continuity and is inebriated. If we want real transcendental love, we have to transfer our love to the supreme lovable object, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the basic principle of Krishna consciousness. In material consciousness, we are trying to love that which is not at all lovable. We give our love to cats and dogs, running the risk that at the time of death we may think of them and consequently take birth in a family of cats or dogs. Our consciousness at the time of death determines our next life. That is one reason why Vedic scriptures stress the chastity of women. If a woman is very much attached to her husband, at the time of death she will think of him, and in the next life she will be promoted to a man's body. Generally, a man's life is better than a woman's because a man usually has better facilities for understanding the spiritual science. But Krishna consciousness is so nice that it makes no distinction between man and woman. In the Bhagavad Gita 9:32, Lord Krishna says, "Anyone who takes shelter of me, whether a woman, Sudra, Vaishya, or someone of low birth, is sure to achieve my association." That is Krishna's guarantee. So all you women who are listening to this, don't worry, you don't have to think about your husbands. Think about Krishna. I'm really glad when that second paragraph came along there, I was thinking, oh boy. But anyway, yeah, perfect. Caitanya Mahaprabhu informs us that in every country and in every scripture there is some hint of love of Godhead. But no one knows what love of Godhead actually is. The Vedic scriptures, however, are different in that they can direct the individual in the proper way to love God. Other scriptures do not give information on how one can love God, nor do they actually define or describe what or who the Godhead actually is. Although they officially promote love of Godhead, they have no idea how to execute it. But Caitanya Mahaprabhu gives a practical demonstration of how to love God in a conjugal relationship. Taking the part of Srimati Radharani, it gets really good from this point on. Taking the part of Srimati Radharani, Caitanya Mahaprabhu tried to love Krishna as Radharani loved him. Krishna was always amazed by Radharani's love. "How does Radharani give me such pleasure?" he would ask. In order to study Radharani, Krishna lived in her role and tried to understand himself. That is the secret of Lord Chaitanya's incarnation. Caitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna, but he has taken the mood and role of Radharani to show us how to love Krishna. Thus, the author writes in the 5th verse, "I offer my respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Lord, who is absorbed in Radharani's thoughts." This brings up the question of who Srimati Radharani is and what Radha Krishna is. Actually, Radha Krishna is the exchange of love, but not ordinary love. Krishna has immense potencies, of which 3 are principal: the internal, the external, and the marginal potencies. Excuse me. In the internal potency, there are 3 divisions: Samvit, Ladini, and Sandini. The Ladini potency is Krishna's pleasure potency. All living entities have this pleasure-seeking potency, for all beings are trying to have pleasure. This is the very nature of the living entity. At present, we are trying to enjoy our pleasure potency by means of the body and the material condition. By bodily contact, we are attempting to derive pleasure from material sense objects. But we should not entertain the nonsensical idea that Krishna, who is always spiritual, also tries to seek pleasure in the material plane. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna describes the material universe as a non-permanent place full of miseries. Why then would he seek pleasure in matter? He is the supersoul, the supreme spirit, and his pleasure is beyond the material conception. To learn how Krishna enjoys pleasure, we must study the first 9 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, and then we should study the 10th canto, in which Krishna's pleasure potency is displayed in his pastimes with Radharani and the damsels of Braj. Unfortunately, unintelligent people turn at once to the sports of Krishna in the Dasama Skanda, the 10th canto. Krishna is embracing Radharani or is dancing with the cowherd girls in the rasa dance are generally not understood by ordinary men, but because they consider these pastimes in the light of mundane lust. They foolishly think that Krishna is like themselves and that he embraces the gopis just as an ordinary man embraces a young girl. Some people thus become interested in Krishna because they think that his religion allows indulgence in sex. This is not Krishna bhakti, love of Krishna, but prakrita sahajya, materialistic lust. To avoid such errors, we should understand what Radha and Krishna actually is. Radha and Krishna display their pastimes through Krishna's internal energy. The pleasure potency of Krishna's internal energy is a most difficult subject matter. Unless one understands what Krishna is, what one cannot understand. The pleasure potency of Krishna's internal energy is a most difficult subject matter, and unless one understands what Krishna is, one cannot understand it. Krishna does not take any pleasure in this material world, but he has a pleasure potency. Because we are part and parcel of Krishna, the pleasure potency is within us also. But we are trying to exhibit that pleasure potency in matter. So Prabhupada's repeating that. He's made that point already. Krishna, however, does not make such a vain attempt. The object of Krishna's pleasure potency is Radharani. Krishna exhibits his potency as Radharani and then engages in loving affairs with her. In other words, Krishna does not take pleasure in this external energy, but exhibits his internal energy, his pleasure potency, as Radharani, and then enjoys with her. Thus, Krishna manifests himself as Radharani in order to enjoy his internal pleasure potency. Of the many extensions, expansions, and incarnations of the Lord, this pleasure potency is the foremost and chief. It is not that Radharani is separate from Krishna. Radharani is also Krishna. For there is no difference between the energy and the energetic. Without energy, there is no meaning to the energetic. And without the energetic, there is no energy. Similarly, without Radha, there is no meaning to Krishna. And without Krishna, there is no meaning to Radha. Because of this, the Vaishnava philosophy first of all pays obeisances to and worships the internal pleasure potency of the Supreme Lord. Can anybody give me an example of that? How the Vaishnava philosophy first of all pays obeisances to and worships the internal pleasure potency of the Supreme Lord? Can anybody give me an example of that? How the Vaishnava philosophy first of all pays obeisances to and worships the internal pleasure potency of the Supreme Lord. Can anybody? Yeah! Thank you! Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. That's the example. Thus, the Lord and his potency are always referred to as Radha Krishna. Similarly, those who worship Narayan first of all utter the name Lakshmi as Lakshmi Narayan. Similarly, those who worship Lord Ram first of all utter the name of Sita. In any case, Sita, Ram, Radha, Krishna, Lakshmi, Narayan, the potency always comes first. Radha and Krishna are one, and when Krishna desires to enjoy pleasure, he manifests himself as Radharani. The pleasure exchange of love between Radha and Krishna is the actual display of Krishna's internal pleasure potency. Although we speak of when Krishna desires, just when he did desire, we cannot say. We only speak in this way because in conditioned life, we take it that everything has a beginning. However, in spiritual life, everything is absolute, and so there is neither beginning nor end. Yet, in order to understand that Radha and Krishna are one, and that they also become divided, the question when automatically comes to mind. When Krishna desired to enjoy his pleasure potency, he manifested himself in the separate form of Radharani. And when he wanted to understand himself through the agency of Radha, he united with Radharani, and that unification is called Lord Caitanya. This is all explained by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj in the 5th verse of the Caitanya Charitamrita. And we just had it even further explained to us by Srila Prabhupada. And hopefully by hearing this, as a result of hearing this, everybody who's hearing is receiving further insight into the whole thing. Because Prabhupada is kind of elaborating upon what Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was saying. In the next verse, the author further explains why Krishna assumed the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Krishna desired to know the glory of Radha's love. Why is she so much in love with me? Krishna asked. What is my special qualification that attracts her so? And what is the actual way in which she loves me? It seems strange that Krishna, as the Supreme, should be attracted by anyone's love. A man searches after the love of a woman because he is imperfect. He lacks something. The love of a woman, that potency and pleasure, is absent in him, and therefore a man wants a woman. But that is not the case with Krishna, who is full in himself. Thus Krishna expressed surprise. Why am I attracted by Radharani? And when Radharani feels my love, what is she actually feeling? To taste the essence of that loving exchange, Krishna made his appearance in the same way that the moon appears on the horizon of the sea. Just as the moon was produced by the churning of the sea, by the churning of spiritual loving affairs, the moon of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. Indeed, Lord Chaitanya's complexion was golden, just like the luster of the moon. Although this is figurative language, it conveys something of the meaning behind the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. After offering respects to Lord Chaitanya, Krishnadas Kaviraj begins offering them to Lord Nityananda in the 7th verse of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The author explains that Lord Nityananda is Balaram, who is the origin of Mahavishnu. Krishna's first expansion is Balaram, a portion of whom is manifested as Sankarshan, who then expands as Pradyumna. In this way, so many expansions take place. Although there are many expansions, Lord Sri Krishna is the origin, as confirmed in the Brahma Samhita. He is like the original candle from which many thousands and millions of candles are lit. Although any number of candles can be lit, the original candle still retains its identity as the origin. In this way, Krishna expands himself in so many forms. And all of these expansions are called Vishnu Tattva. Vishnu is a large light, and we are small lights, but all are expansions of Krishna. When it is necessary to create the material universes, Vishnu expands himself as Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu lies down in the causal ocean, breathes all the universes from his nostrils. Thus, Mahavishnu and the causal ocean spring. Thus, from Mahavishnu and the causal ocean spring all the universes, and all these universes, including ours, float in the causal ocean. In this regard, there is the story of Vamana, who, when he took 3 steps, struck his foot through the coverings of the universe. The reason I'm smiling is just as I'm reading this, I'm kind of remembering what it was like reading this for the first time. And as I mentioned, I was reading it and I kind of felt I was captivated by it. And I can remember reading this 48 years ago and thinking to myself, what the heck is this? What is, you never come across anything like this in my life up till that point. And I remember reading it and going, what the heck? What is this? What is this information? It's amazing. This is an amazing book. So reading on. Water from the causal ocean flowed through the hole that his foot made. And it is said that water became the river Ganges. Therefore, the Ganges is accepted as the most sacred water of Vishnu and is worshipped by all Hindus, from the Himalayas down to the Bay of Bengal. Mahavishnu is actually an expansion of Balaram, who is Krishna's first expansion, and in the Vrindavan pastimes, his brother. In the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The word Rama refers to Balaram. Since Lord Nityananda is Balaram, Rama also refers to Lord Nityananda. Thus, Hare Krishna addresses not only Krishna and Balaram, but Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda as well. Ooh, that's important. Did everybody get that? Let me read that again. Okay, so it says here, in the Maha Mantra, and Prabhupada says the Mahamantra. The word Rama refers to Balaram, and since Lord Nityananda is Balaram, Rama, and it also refers to Lord Nityananda. Thus, Hare Krishna addresses not only Krishna and Balaram, but Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda as well. So when we're chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, you're also chanting to Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. I'm sure I forgot about that. You're chanting to Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda when you're chanting the Hare Krishna mantra because they're expansions. The subject matter of Caitanya Charitamrita deals primarily with what is beyond this material creation. The cosmic material expansion is called Maya, illusion, because it has no eternal existence. But it is sometimes manifested and sometimes not. It is regarded as illusory. But beyond this temporary manifestation is a higher nature, as indicated in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, text 20. Anybody know that verse? Oh. Get out of here. Cheater. All right. Yeah. All right. Anyway. Parastasmatu bhavanyo vyakto vyaktat sanatana yasasarveshu bhuteshu nasyatsu na vinashyati. Yet there is another unmanifested nature, which is eternal and is transcendental to this manifested and manifested matter. It is supreme and it is never annihilated. When all in this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. End quote. The material world has a manifested state, vyakta, and a potential unmanifested state, avyakta. The supreme nature is beyond both the manifested and unmanifested material nature. This superior nature can be understood as the living force, which is present in the bodies of all living creatures. The body itself is composed of inferior nature, matter, but it is the superior nature that is moving the body. The symptom of that superior nature is consciousness. Thus, in the spiritual world, where everything is composed of the superior nature, everything is conscious. That's a big sentence too, right there. Thus, in the spiritual world, where everything is composed of the superior nature, everything is conscious. Wow. In the material world, there are inanimate objects that are not conscious. But in the spiritual world, nothing is inanimate. There, a table is conscious. The land is conscious. The trees are conscious. Everything is conscious. Wow. It means you could serve Krishna as a table. You could serve Krishna as land. You could serve Krishna as a tree. Everything is conscious. It is not possible to imagine how far this material manifestation extends. In the material world, everything is calculated by imagination or by some imperfect method, but the Vedic literatures give real information of what lies beyond the material universe. Since it is not possible to obtain information of anything beyond this material nature by experimental means, those who believe only in experimental knowledge may doubt the Vedic conclusions. For such people cannot even calculate how far this universe extends, nor can they reach far into the universe itself. That which is beyond our power of conception is called achintya, inconceivable. It is useless to argue or speculate about the inconceivable. If something is truly inconceivable, it is not subject to speculation or experimentation. Our energy is limited and our sense perception is limited. Therefore, we must rely on the Vedic conclusions regarding that subject matter which is inconceivable. Knowledge of the superior nature must simply be accepted without argument. How is it possible to argue about something to which we have no access? The method for understanding transcendental subject matter is given by Lord Krishna himself in the Bhagavad Gita, where he tells Arjuna at the beginning of the 4th chapter, Imam vivashvate yogam proktavan aham aviyam vivaswan manave praha manor ikshvakave bravit. I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivaswan, and Vivaswan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind. And Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. End quote. This is the method of parampara, or disciplic succession. Similarly, Srimad Bhagavatam explains that Krishna imparted knowledge into the heart of Brahma, the first created being within the universe. Brahma imparted those lessons to his disciplic succession, to his disciple Narada, and Narada imparted that knowledge to his disciple Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva imparted it to Madhvacharya, and from Madhvacharya the knowledge came down to Madhavendra Puri, and then to Ishvara Puri, and from him to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One may ask that if Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Krishna himself, then why did he need a spiritual master? Of course, he did not need a spiritual master, but because he was playing the role of Acharya, one who teaches by example, he accepted a spiritual master. Even Krishna himself accepted a spiritual master, for that is the system. In this way, the Lord sets the example for men. Okay, so I don't see here, so okay, for extra credit points, who is Lord Krishna's spiritual master? Okay, yeah, that's correct. I want to make sure it wasn't Archita answering. It wasn't. Okay, we should not think, however, that the Lord takes a spiritual master because he is in want of knowledge. He is simply stressing the importance of accepting the disciplic succession. The knowledge taught in that disciplic succession actually comes from the Lord himself, and if the knowledge descends unbroken, it is perfect. Although we may not be in touch with the original personality who imparted the knowledge, we may receive the same knowledge through the process of transmission. Through this process of transmission, disciplic succession. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that Krishna, the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, transmitted transcendental knowledge into the heart of Brahma. And this, then, is one way knowledge is received, through the heart. Thus, there are two processes by which one may receive knowledge. One depends directly upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated as the Supersoul within the heart of all living entities, and the other depends upon the Guru, or spiritual master, who is an expansion of Krishna. Thus, Krishna transmits information both from within and from without. We simply have to receive it. If knowledge is received in this way, it doesn't matter whether it is inconceivable or not. In Srimad Bhagavatam, there is a great deal of information given about the Vaikuntha planetary systems, which are beyond the material universe. Similarly, a great deal of inconceivable information is given in the Caitanya Charitamrita. Any attempt to arrive at this information through experimental knowledge will fail. The knowledge simply has to be accepted. According to the Vedic method, Shabda, or transcendental sound, is regarded as evidence. Sound is very important in the Vedic understanding, for if it is pure, it is accepted as authoritative. Even in the material world, we accept a great deal of information sent thousands of miles by telephone or radio. In this way, we also accept sound as evidence in our daily lives. Although we cannot see the informant, we accept his information as valid on the basis of sound. Sound vibration, then, is very important in the transmission of Vedic knowledge. Okay, so we've reached our time limit. Anybody have anything that they want to say about all this? Yeah. Okay. I don't know the answer to that question. Does anybody know the answer to that question? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Did you hear that from Gaur Govinda Maharaj? Or? Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Anything they'd like to ask or say? Okay, thank you very much. Teachings of Lord Chaitanya ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. devotee who's